Yes, guys, welcome to the Fancy Football Fix live stream ahead of Game Week 16. My name is FPL Nacho, and it is so good to be here with the final game week before the World Cup. I can't believe how quickly this season has flown by so far. And the fact we have the World Cup in just over a week's time seems ridiculous that we are still talking about fantasy football. But obviously, for us FPL managers, this is still a fantastic time for us to claw back those ranks for those managers that firstly have not had a good start to the season, and secondly, those that have had a good start to the season. You can really look for those 1 week punts going into game week 16. And that is what this stream is going to be all about. With us getting unlimited transfers during the World Cup, hopefully you guys knew that. We are going to be looking at those best players to bring in for game week 16 in isolation. Of course, this is a very unique, very specific thing this season where we only have to really focus on this game week, because beyond this, we can take them out of our teams straight away. So I'm really excited to discuss some of the players that we have. I've built a whole 11, a squad of 11 full of differentials, which could be really, really awesome to go through. Going to be touching on my transfer plans going into game week 16. I'm currently sat without Haaland, so you're going to want to stick around for this, guys, because obviously there is a lot of surgery that potentially needs to be done with my team. Or is there? We'll discuss that. And then, of course, we'll be looking at the predicted points for the best players in game week 16. So, guys, get in the chat like you always do. Let me know who is tuning into this live stream. It'd be great to see who is involved. And as always, if you are new around here, I know we have the World Cup coming up, but there is still going to be so much content coming out between now and the end of the season. You're going to want to make sure you are checking out. So make sure you do hit that subscribe button. And if you enjoy the stream, make sure you do drop a like. It would just mean a lot that it shows that it's providing some value to you guys. I can see Wayne in the chat already, and Yacino as well. Hope you guys are doing well. Wayne's already asked, Mitrovic to Martial, is it worth a hit? Now, while I'm not a big fan of taking a hit for one game week in isolation, because of course, when we take a -4 point hit, we'll put a lot of pressure on the player that we're bringing in to deliver the goods. And in the usual season, when you do take a points hit, you're usually looking at multiple game weeks where that -4 point hit can be returned. When we're trying to get it just in one game week, it's very, very difficult to get kind of not only break even, but positive returns. Now, Mitrovic, with players that we know are not going to be playing in game week 16, we need to treat it slightly differently. Effectively, you're going to get 0 points for Mitrovic, whereas if you bring in a player for a -4, I view it almost as a -2, because you're likely going to get 2 points for their appearance, which means that you're only really taking a -2 point hit. Now, in your case here, when you're discussing Martial, we are talking about a player that is still returning from injury. So I would argue that his game time isn't necessarily guaranteed, but, and it is worth noting this, if you are looking for a little bit of a differential and someone whose underlying stats are ridiculous when he actually does play for Man United, I don't think they come much better than Martial. So my answer is this, Wayne. If you have the risk appetite to bring in someone like Martial, who potentially could get rotated or even pick up another injury, as he might be getting rushed back in Ronaldo's absence, then I really do like the move there. And Yacino saying, hello, I'm going to do it, only waiting for leaks to check if Alvarez starts. Yeah, so guys, before we get into the meat of this live stream, I just want to quickly touch on kind of like, obviously the elephant in the room, which is going to be the early kickoff being Man City. Now, if those who aren't aware, the servers have crashed the last few weeks because Man City team news has been released before the deadline. And because there has been accounts out there that has been releasing the Man City team news 15-20 minutes before the deadline, it has meant that everybody is jumping onto the official fantasy football site or the app. And it means that the servers basically can't hold all of these people on the site at one time, which means that it is all crashing. I've seen a lot of experienced managers out there being unable to make their transfers. And I know that they're the sort of people that are on the ball. So if they're struggling to make their transfers, then I'm really, really conscious that there are going to be other people out there that don't take it as serious who could be caught off guard. So I want to make sure you guys are completely in the know. Because Man City are the early kickoff, we have an 11 AM UK time deadline. It does mean that we are likely going to get some Man City team news. Now, it's only right that I share with you the information that we're getting shared on social media. The main account that is sharing it is an account called Team News and Ticks. Likely drops it on Twitter and on Instagram. So my advice is to first and foremost make sure you are following that account, and also get yourself active on social media prior to the deadline, as a lot of the top accounts will be sharing that information before the deadline if we do get a Man City team leak. Now, of course, with a lot of managers out there, with Haaland, Alvarez, Foden, for example, I think there is going to be a benefit to waiting until the Man City team leak before you make your transfers. However, of course, if you do wait 20 minutes, 15 minutes before the deadline to get this team leak to make your transfers, I just want to make sure that you're completely aware that you are taking a risk that your transfers may not get put through because of the site crashing, which has happened over the last few weeks. Now, I am definitely going to be one that is going to wait until the last minute because I am a Kevin De Bruyne and an Alvarez owner. And I do deem the Man City team leak potentially coming out worthwhile me waiting off on my transfers. So just wanted to raise the awareness there before we do get into this live stream and make sure you are just conscious of a potential site crash that could happen. So hopefully you are aware of that. And yeah, I think we'll get started, guys, with my team. We'll discuss what my plans are going into game week 16. Of course, without Haaland in my side, this is going to be a very, very interesting discussion. So again, guys, if you can, that'd be amazing. If you can, drop a like on the live stream. We always try and hit 50 likes, and you guys always deliver. So let's get started with my team. Okay, guys, so it is worth noting that I haven't actually selected my team that it could potentially be. This is how my team is looking right now as we speak. So the reason why I haven't put any potential team on the screen is mainly because, sorry, I need a drink there. It's mainly because I really don't know what direction I'm going. And to my left here right now, I basically have basically like a flow chart of the scenarios that could happen and the moves that I will make if that scenario does happen with the Man City team league. Yes, I know it is sad, but you know what they say? What do they say? Prepare to fail, fail to prepare. That kind of slogan I think is going to be relevant in this deadline for game week 16. So obviously the Man City pair of Kevin De Bruyne and Alvarez is the big issue in my team right now. I could foresee a situation where Kevin De Bruyne doesn't play, or a 60-minute appearance with him coming off early once the game is wrapped up to rest him for the World Cup. With Mitrovic being injured, that's a player on my bench that obviously isn't going to come on if there was a situation where Alvarez wasn't to start. So here are my current plans going into game week 16, and I'm going to look at my flow chart here to tell you exactly what the scenario would be and the moves that I would make. So if we get confirmation that Kevin De Bruyne and Alvarez are starting for Man City again, this is at best if we do get that sort of news before the deadline, then my likely move is going to be selling Dunk, who I actually think is a good move this week. I think he's a perfectly hold for your team. He could definitely pick up a clean sheet against Aston Villa. But I do think Dunk to Perisic is a move that I am currently considering for my team. I think it offers that upside of with Perisic on set pieces, with a good fixture against Leeds. I don't personally think he will be playing as a left of the front three or up front. I think he will play as a left wing back. But I think Spurs is a good fixture for him against Leeds. So bringing in Perisic for Dunk is an option that I'm definitely considering right now. And that is my likely move if we do get confirmation that De Bruyne and Alvarez are starting. Now, you're probably sat there thinking, what about Haaland? And I have absolutely debated bringing in Haaland, and it might still be something I am considering. However, this will be for a -4 point, and it would require me selling De Bruyne, selling Mitrovic, and then obviously bringing in 2 players as replacements, one of them being Haaland. And if I was to go for that move, I just can't really bring myself to do a -4 for the team. I don't know whether Haaland is going to just explode to the level where the -4 is deemed appropriate, because I absolutely think that Kevin De Bruyne is perfectly fine as a captaincy option going into game week 16. It's worth noting as well, the vice captaincy on the screen for you is on Alvarez, but that would be on Mo Salah if I was to go for this team. The reason I would have the captaincy on Kevin De Bruyne is just to get myself some Man City coverage if they were to go off and win 4 or 5-0. I need to get myself some potential of that Man City haul. If it's not going to be on Haaland, then I would like to think it would be on Kevin De Bruyne. Now, situation number 2 here, I'm just looking at my board. If we get confirmation that De Bruyne and Alvarez are benched, this is where a real headache is going to start to happen. This will mean that I will sell Kevin De Bruyne because he is such a big cash cow on my team, and I would likely move him to Kulusevski at Spurs. Now, I'd have 8 million available because I would sell Mitrovic to Haaland. So I'd have 8 million available. And a few of the names that are on my radar right now is going to be Kulusevski as a real punt. Zaha, but I sold him in game week 14. And you know what it's like. I don't really want to go back there. Nottingham Forest could actually put up a decent performance at home before the World Cup. So Zaha's on the radar. And Trossard is on the radar as well. 3 players out. And also Rashford, it is worth noting. I think is a brilliant transfer in as well. So I have lots of directions that I can go in my team, but I naturally do feel like Kulusevski is a high ceiling, high risk, high reward player that I kind of want to bring in if I'm going to bring in such a rank coverage player in the shape of Erling Haaland. Because of course, me bringing in Haaland as part of a -4 is only going to be a negative thing for my team, because while others are getting the captaincy points for Haaland, I will be getting them as well. But of course, I will be getting them at the expense of a -4 point hit. So I won't be reaping all of the rewards from the transfer. Now, if we get a situation where we get no news at all, then I think I would likely have to pull the trigger on going for the safe move of Dunk to Perisic and pray that De Bruyne and Alvarez start, because I could bring in Haaland for a -4 point hit and get no information about him starting, and then I've taken a points hit for a player that isn't even featuring. Now, in regards to captaincy for my team, as I said, if I was to roll with this team and not bring in Haaland, I think I have to put the captaincy on Kevin De Bruyne to get myself some Man City coverage. However, I absolutely think that Mo Salah is a fantastic captaincy option going into this game week. With a game against Southampton, who have just sacked Hasenhüttl, and defensively, really struggling away from home Southampton. And I think Salah, he's been passing the eye test, underlying stats are still fantastic. I think he's a brilliant differential captain if you are looking to play the field against Erling Haaland. So Salah, brilliant move. KDB if you want to get the Man City coverage. Otherwise, the number one option is absolutely going to be Harry Kane. So that's my thoughts on my team, guys. Again, my advice would be, if you are going to wait till the last minute for Man City team news, have situations written out in front of you. I know it seems sad, but you're not going to have the time to think if we do get surprising team news. Put each situation that could happen in front of you and the players that you want to bring in. Once we get the potential Man City team leaks, you can just go straight onto the app or the website, get those transfers done before it potentially crashes. Because I know a lot of people who dilly-dallied and then got into a real bad position where they weren't able to activate their transfers. And my other advice is get the captaincy on a player right now that you would be happy for him to be captain, just in case you make a late transfer and it doesn't go through. So, guys, that's my transfer plans. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Am I going mental for not considering Haaland in my side? I feel like I've lost the plot a little bit, but also for a -4, Kevin De Bruyne, I think in any place at any time could go in with a double-digit haul, and then I'm going to be really regretting selling him. So let's go back into the chat, guys, and then we will come on to the most important part of this live stream, which is going to be the differential 11 that I've created that I personally think are some of the best one-week punts going into game week 16. So Dav's saying, I'm thinking Jesus or Darwin for Mitrovic, and I think if you can get to either of those are fantastic moves. I think Darwin Núñez is the one that I would probably just tilt towards. His underlying stats are absolutely fantastic. I think Liverpool have a really good fixture as well at home against Southampton. Jesus, on the other hand, is playing for one of the best in-form teams in the league right now. So I think if you want to bring in a player that you know you're going to get a solid performance from the actual team, Jesus is the route to go for, definitely. But from a underlying stats perspective, and I would say a high-risk, high-reward player, I think Darwin Núñez is the player that I would go for as a Mitrovic replacement. Hassam saying, Everton have a couple of injuries. I replaced Mitrovic with Solanke. Interesting you say that, because I have got a little section on him later on, which we will touch on. And I think Solanke is more than a fine transfer in. Even though it doesn't seem glamorous to a lot of people, I do feel like these sort of game weeks, we sometimes get too caught up in the potential of certain players. So with someone like Solanke, who's been ticking over quite nicely throughout the course of the season, he probably will get disregarded by a lot of managers, by the shiny toys of other players like Martial, for example. And while Solanke is offering guaranteed game time and a really good home fixture, sometimes the obvious move like Solanke is the right move to make. Sometimes we get our attention drawn to these other players like Martial, and sometimes they are just right in front of you that you need to pull the trigger on. Yassino saying, have you prepared PLB and captain if KDB and Alvarez don't start? I think I did cover that one off in that section that I mentioned earlier. And Paris saying, can't wait to see Palace keep a clean sheet. That absolutely could happen against Nottingham Forest. And it is worth noting that while I do have Ward between the sticks, I probably am going to be tempted to swap Gaeta and Ward around. Even though West Ham were really, really poor in game week 15 against Crystal Palace, I still fancy them now and then for a goal. And against a Crystal Palace team who, against a Leicester team who have been doing really well recently, I probably do favour the Crystal Palace fixture over Leicester's. It's just because Leicester have been so good defensively recently. Benjamin saying, Almiron against Chelsea or Edouard against Forest, who to start? The answer there is absolutely Almiron. I'm a Chelsea fan, and I can tell you that I am not confident about this game at all. Almiron is one of the most informed players in the league right now. And the problem with Almiron, and it's not a problem for him, it's a problem for us FPL managers that don't own him. Players at Almiron are a perfect example of managers like myself who like to look into the detail a little bit, sometimes think that these players like Almiron who are cheap can't sustain the returns that they are delivering. But when a player like Almiron, who is cheap in the game, is actually putting up the numbers that he is from an underlying stats perspective, it's crazy that I haven't brought him into my team. And I absolutely applaud those that brought him in early doors, because if I was to remove the price tag of Almiron and the name of Almiron, and I just showed you the underlying stats for the course of the season so far, you would look at him and think, that is a Mason Mount, a Kulusevski, a Saka at 8 million, and I absolutely would buy him in a heartbeat. But then I put Almiron as the name, and I put the 5.8 million price tag next to him, and you think to yourself, oh yeah, but it's Almiron, it won't be sustainable. The stats are there. The actual team in Newcastle are one of the most informed teams in the league from a creation perspective and just a general play perspective. So I see no reason why Almiron isn't a fantastic option for this game week, and I absolutely would start him over Edouard, even though they play against Chelsea at home. And David's saying, currently have one free transfer with both Mitrovic and Wilson out. Any ideas? Yeah, so obviously you're in a bit of a sticky situation right now. I think selling Mitrovic is the priority right now. Of course, David, I don't know how much money you have in the bank. So I think Mitrovic out. If you can go all the way Darwin Núñez, that would be my first and foremost priority. I think if you want the high risk, high reward player, it will be Martial. With the Ronaldo illness, with the rumours knocking about, and I just think he doesn't want to play before the World Cup. I think Martial could be a fantastic 1 week punt. Played 60 minutes in the Carabao Cup, picked up a goal, went off, wasn't injured. If Ten Hag thinks that he potentially could play another game 4 days later, then I think Martial is a brilliant alternative to Mitrovic if you want to go down that route. Colm saying Mitro is definitely out, so he is your main concern. Yes, that he's kind of covered that off there. And Ema said, I got Watkins in for Mitrovic. Thoughts? Yes, so Watkins and Aston Villa in general are a very, very difficult team for us to kind of pinpoint right now. Because of the new manager in place, we're still getting an understanding on, first and foremost, how are the team performing, what is the best starting 11, and is he getting the best out of these certain players. So I think for a 1 week punt, I like Watkins. I do think he will start. But, of course, we don't really know what we're going to get with Aston Villa because they are in a bit of a transitional period. Maybe Unai Emery just looks at this fixture and thinks it's a 1 week hit. I'm just going to go for the win. Or he thinks consolidate, pick up some points before World Cup, and we will kind of regroup after the World Cup. So Watkins I do like, but of course I would feel like Martial is almost the higher risk, higher reward player in your team. And Yassino saying, why sell KDB while he can get more points in hand? And Yassino, that is exactly what I am currently deliberating right now. I only foresee myself selling Kevin De Bruyne if we get confirmation that he is benched. Otherwise, I'm not going to be in a spot where I want to sell him. I do agree. 60 minutes of Kevin De Bruyne could deliver at any point, any time across the course of the season. And in particular for a game against Brentford, who are one of the worst performing teams away from home. You guys won't be able to see this, but I'm just going to get up the stats right now for Brentford away from home from a defensive perspective. And in terms of defending, expected goals conceded for Brentford away from home is 11.27 goals in 7 games. And they've actually conceded 17 goals in 7 games. And they're going to be playing against a Man City team who have currently scored 29 goals in 7 games and expected goals of 16.8. So realistically, guys, we're in a situation right now where we are getting one of the worst away teams in the league versus the best home team in the league. If we do not get a demolition of Brentford, then we just have to accept that it wasn't our day from a Man City perspective. And again, this is when decisions don't dictate the outcome and why you need to disassociate yourself from the outcome. Based on the fixtures and the underlying stats, this is absolutely the right move to go for a triple up on Man City and a captaincy on them. And if they do not deliver and they don't pick up a 3-4-0 win, then we just have to accept that it was one of those games, but the decision making was absolutely there based on the underlying stats. So, guys, I've rambled on my team enough. Obviously, if you have enjoyed what you listened about my team, make sure you do drop a like. And obviously, if you have any strong opinions about my team, please do drop them in the comments. It'd be great to hear what your thoughts are on the team. So this is the main part now of the stream, guys. I'm going to get up a starting 11 of differential players who I think are some of the best one-week punts for game week 16. So let's get them up on your screens now. Okay, so here we have a team. Now, I'm going to call it the differential 11. However, there are certain players in this draft who are 20-30% ownership, but I feel like they've become differentials in some manner because of transfers out or a loss of confidence from the community in them. So, players on screen right now, let's just run through them quickly and then we will go into some questions that you guys have about the team. So goalkeepers, I'm not really interested in the goalkeepers. I think you have to be in a really, really luxury position to make a goalkeeper transfer, or in a really, really terrible position where you don't have a goalkeeper for game week 16. I really don't think the goalkeeper department is where that high reward transfer is going to be. Realistically, you're going to sell a goalkeeper that's either going to get 2 points or 6 points for a goalkeeper that will either get 2 points or 6 points. And in the 1 in 10 transfer, you'll pick up the goalkeeper that saves a penalty and gets a 15-pointer. Otherwise, I really don't think goalkeepers is worth your while for a 1 game week punt. But I put Edison between the sticks just because realistically, they have the best fixture from a defensive perspective. And Edison, you can guarantee, is going to start in this Man City team. Might be appropriate for some people out there. Maybe you have a double of Man City and you can't get yourself to another attacker and you just want to get yourself a third Man City coverage. I think Edison is the best goalkeeper transfer if you are in that position. So let's run through the defenders first and foremost. Luke Shaw, I have put in the team. Now, we have to remember that Diego Dallo is suspended for game week 16, which basically elevates Luke Shaw as what I think is the best 1 week punt from the Man City defence. So main reason why I like Luke Shaw is because Fulham are going to be without Mitrovic for game week 16. Their focal point in the team isn't going to be present. And I do think with Fulham, although they do create a lot of chances, they are all catered towards Mitrovic. The replacement in someone like Vincius, I believe his name is really not the standard that Mitrovic is going to offer. And I like what I'm seeing so far this season with Man United from a defensive perspective. Yes, the absence of Varane has hindered them, but I still think they have enough in the locker and enough in their team to keep Fulham out. So I like Luke Shaw, and he is a decent price point. Another player that I really do like is Konate at Liverpool, with that great home fixture against Southampton. Now, he's a cheap route into the Liverpool defence. So if you're currently sat there with a defender, maybe priced around 5 million that you really don't like, and you want to get yourself some investment in the Liverpool defence, but you can't get Van Dijk, Robertson or Trent, I really think Konate is a brilliant move for your teams. He's a cheap way into the defence, and Saints Southampton have the 3rd worst away expected goals and have only scored 4 goals in 7 away fixtures. So I do think if Liverpool are ever going to keep a clean sheet, it will be in this game. And I'll be shocked if Konate doesn't start this game. They have looked so much better with him in the team. Gomez has been an absolute car crash, and I don't believe Matip is fully fit and available for this fixture. So I think Konate is a brilliant move into your team if you want to get some Liverpool coverage in that defence and you can't afford the obvious routes into Robertson or Trent Alexander-Arnold. Now, the glamorous pick in defence is going to be Ivan Perisic of Tottenham. Now, a lot of talk about him potentially not playing. Is he going to get the game time suitable for a transfer? And I do think with the potential illness, it is worth noting to Session, which sounds like we'll rule him out for game week 16. I think that all but confirms that Perisic will start in the game in game week 16 against Leeds. Now, it's worth putting a caveat on this. Leeds against top teams have been delivering so far this season. You may remember the Arsenal game, which they were so unfortunate not to get a result from. They beat Chelsea on their own turf. They beat Liverpool at Anfield. And of course, they picked up another result. What was that other result? Give me a second. What was that other result, guys? It's going to bug me, and I know it's not really that relevant, but they also picked up a really good result. Maybe they didn't. Okay, well, either way, they have been fantastic against the big boys so far this season. I don't think we've seen enough from Spurs to potentially think, oh, they're going to put up a real test and absolutely blow Leeds away. I think it will be a tough game, but Perisic playing at left wing back is a gem at 5.5 million. I know that he hasn't been delivering over the course of the season, but for a one game week punt, I really do like him. He's on all set pieces in the absence of Son. We need to remember that Spurs from set pieces have been one of the best in the league. So from an assist potential, he is right up there as the best option this week. And if we were to get a luxury position where he was going to play as a forward alongside Kane, or even in a front three on the left-hand side, then that is just going to enhance him as an FPL option. But I do think he will play as a left wing back this weekend. But I don't think that diminishes his value from an FPL perspective. So Perisic, I think, is the best transfer from a defensive perspective, just because of that attacking potential alongside the clean sheet potential. Now, moving into the midfield, Phil Foden, you probably would argue, isn't necessarily much of a differential. However, he's currently the most sold player going into game week 16. His back-to-back-to-back benchings have basically meant managers just given up with him, and they have just sold him in their droves. I believe it's 300,000 transfers out, I believe. Yeah, 340,000 transfers out for Phil Foden. So, look, as I said about the team leaks, if you have Phil Foden right now, I think it's ridiculous to sell him as we speak. You wait until the potential Man City team leak 20 minutes before the deadline. If we get confirmation that he is going to be starting, I honestly think Phil Foden is one of the best options this game week. And you've got yourself almost a differential in some manner based on what he was previously owned to what he is now. 22.7% ownership overall in the game, and I can guarantee you that is going to be less in live teams. So I think he's a fantastic move, and I can tell you exactly actually what his ownership right now is in the game. Let me just get this up for you. Give me 2 seconds, because over on Fantasy Football Fix, what we can do is actually look at the player's ownership in live teams, because of course there's going to be a lot of teams out there that are dead teams where managers aren't making any transfers whatsoever. So effectively, Foden will just be sitting in a lot of teams out there. So based on live ownership, it is 25%. So again, still what I would argue a decent differential pick in today's market with the likes of Haaland being so ridiculous. Mitoma, this is just a cheap option. I see Jude in there asking about Mitoma. So I'm not necessarily going to be screaming from the rooftops that Mitoma is going to be the highest scorer player this week, because the underlying stats aren't necessarily incredible, but 1 goal, 1 assist in the last 2 game weeks. And from an eye test perspective, he really, really is delivering and living up to the hype. But of course, I would only argue Mitoma is an option if you need to downgrade a midfielder to upgrade other departments. So for example, if you don't have Haaland in your team, you need to sell a player and you need to free up about 4 or 5 million. I think Mitoma is the best cheap option going into this game week. I don't really know what we're going to get from Aston Villa from a defensive perspective, but what I know is that Brighton are performing so well so far this season. A lot of their starting 11 got rested in the Carabao Cup, even though they did beat Arsenal. So I do think Mitoma is a brilliant transfer in if you're just looking for a real cheap enabler in your midfield. Moving on to Kulusevski. This is one of the puntiest punts, obviously, because he's just returned from injury. 4% owned, but I believe in live teams, it's probably going to be similar. He is currently owned in live teams by 1.1%. So we are talking about an ultimate differential for a player that we know can deliver over the course of the season. And we touched on Leeds. Although they have been decent against the big teams, they still conceded 3 goals against Bournemouth. They still are conceding goals. So I think there's going to be potential for them there. I don't really want to deep dive into the underlying stats because we haven't really got much from Kulusevski over the course of this season because of his injuries. But if you want to go for a punt around the 8 million mark, and again, I still think Foden, I still think Saka are probably better options. But if you're really looking for that sub 5% pick in that mid-price midfielder route, Kulusevski, I think, is a brilliant move. We saw his impact when he came on in that fixture against Liverpool. All the creativity goes through him in this team. I think Harry Kane is only going to be improved when Kulusevski is on the field. Last up in the midfield is going to be Marcus Rashford. Again, not necessarily a differential, one would argue, because he has been brought in quite a few times by a lot of managers recently. But over the last few game weeks, he really has passed the eye test. Now, from an FPL points perspective, he hasn't really been hauling, it is worth arguing. He hasn't delivered those double-digit hauls that we would love to see at his price point at 6.7 million. But I like what I'm seeing over the last 3 game weeks. 0.89 expected goals per 90 and 7.62 expected FPL points per 90. So I think always the problem in FPL is going to be if you're in a situation like me where you sell 2 players, you bring in Haaland and you have 8 million available for a midfielder, you always feel like you need to spend all of that money. So for example, based on prices, if you had 8 million available, Kulusevski is the first player you look at if you're going down the prices. Then you're going to reach Zaha, then you're going to reach Trossard, then you're going to reach Rashford. And even though other people might not think this, I can guarantee you a lot of people out there think to themselves, well, I feel like I need to spend that additional 1.5, so I'm going to go for Kulusevski. When sometimes the cheaper option, like Rashford, who's posting these sorts of numbers, is the obvious move. And you just leave that money in the bank. Sometimes the more expensive player isn't always the better option. And in this case, I do think that Rashford is a better option than Kulusevski, just because we do have those underlying stats over the last few game weeks, and we have an improving Man United team who I do think will get a positive result against Fulham. Solanke in the team, I don't want to talk too much about Solanke. We've seen what you can do in this Bournemouth team. You know what you're getting. You're not getting a player that's going to pick up double-digit hauls, but he's a decent replacement for Mitrovic. If you don't have money to upgrade, you don't like the risk of Martial, I think Solanke is the best alternative to Mitrovic if none of those things apply to you. Great fixture against Everton at home. Everton showed their vulnerabilities against Leicester in the previous game week. Although Everton defensively have been good, I still think there's going to be opportunities for Bournemouth in that game. Right, last 2. We talked about a punt for Martial, and I still think he is the biggest punt going into this game week. He is sub 1% owned. It is absolutely ridiculous. And the reason being is because he's only played 129 minutes this season in the league. Really, really little for us to go off. But in those minutes that he has played, his numbers are ridiculous. Expected FPL points per 90, 9.14. And expected goals per 90, 0.89. Now again, he's only played 129 minutes, so it is impossible to come to any sort of conclusions with Martial as an option. But again, if we are looking for those exciting picks, you're sat there at 1 million, 1.5, 2 million your ranks, and you're happy to go for those real extreme punts. I don't think they come much better than Anthony Martial. Fulham give up chances at Craven Cottage, it is worth noting. Based on them at home, you would think that Craven Cottage, a tough place to go to, which I would argue based on their results has been. But if I get up, and you won't see this on the screen, the home form of all teams so far this season, looking at the defensive numbers for Fulham, Fulham have conceded 11 goals in 7 home games, and their expected goals conceded is 11.3. So this isn't going to be a Fulham team that are going to be resolute in defence and looking to shut up shop. They give up so many chances against them. And I do think, looking at the shots conceded as well, conceding around 81 shots in those 7 games, there is going to be plenty of chances for Man United. And I think Martial, if he does lead the line, is going to be a brilliant option in our team. So I love him as a differential. Last up, before we get into the questions, guys, Darwin Núñez. You can't look at differentials without considering Darwin Núñez in our teams. What a frustrating player he has been so far this season. However, his underlying stats continue to be unbelievable. He's second best for expected goals per 90 at 0.76. Only Erling Haaland has a better rate than him. Obviously, Martial does, but I'm looking at players who have played more than 500 minutes so far this season. And also, he is top for shots per 90 minutes at 6.24, which is outrageous. And with this formation that Liverpool have now settled on a little bit, with the two up top of Salah and Darwin Núñez, Firmino dropping in and being a creative force, the numbers are still really, really good for Darwin Núñez. And interestingly as well, he's actually producing really good expected assists per 90. He's about 0.3. So a lot of people have this narrative of him being greedy, and I do agree it is there. But he's still a creative force in the Liverpool team, as well as a goal hog, which is always what we want to see. And if you are looking for a Mitrovic replacement, all the money in the world available, Darwin Núñez is the number one differential that I would have for you guys. His numbers are great, the fixture is great, and I think it is all geared towards his first double-digit haul this season. So let me know in the chat, guys, who is your number one Game Week 16 punt. I'm going to come back into the questions and answer a few that I've missed off, and then we'll finish the stream on the predicted points going into Game Week 16. And I can see we're at 16 likes, guys. If you can get us to 50 likes, I know it's a big ask. That would be massively appreciated. It just gets it out there for others that are looking for a little bit of FPL content this Friday evening. Mads, hope you're doing well. Good evening. Wilson to Haaland and KDB to Kulusevski/Foden for a -4. If so, who will you pick in the midfield? I really do think if you are willing to wait until the Man City team leaks, if we get confirmation that Foden is playing, Foden absolutely is the better option than Kulusevski. I think with Man City's ridiculous home form, Foden not playing in the last 3 league games, starting it is worth noting. I think there's opportunity there for Foden to get a monster haul. So Foden will be the answer there. Steve, can't get to Núñez or TAA, only Firmino. Better to go Thiago Silva to Perisic. Yeah, this is a very, very tricky one because Firmino not being in the World Cup side, I would anticipate to start this fixture. I actually probably would prefer Firmino over Perisic. I think Firmino, these sort of fixtures, we know what he's like. He'll go blank, 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 18, 19 point, blank, blank, blank. And it feels like this fixture could be the one. So I like Firmino as an alternative. Thiago Silva to Perisic, I do like. But again, I'm not as confident on the Spurs clean sheet. It is worth noting. David saying -4 for Martial and Núñez, maybe. Well, David, you were saying you have 1 free transfer for both Mitrovic and Wilson. I probably would just do the Mitrovic move personally. And as I said, you'd have 6.8 million available, so you can afford 8.3, so you can't get to Núñez. So I do like the Martial move. Yes, if you are in a position where you really don't want Callum Wilson and you are worried about his game time, then I think the -4 is okay because you're effectively selling 2 players that are not going to play for Game Week 16 for 2 players that have real upside this week. Again, you need to understand the risk if you do bring in Martial that he may not play. But I think with the rumours of Ronaldo's potential illness, and I really think he isn't going to play before the World Cup, he's at that stage where the World Cup's going to be his big swan song. I would be very surprised if Ronaldo does start this weekend. Josh Chambers, who is the best 1 week punt to use the free transfers on regardless of the positions? Well, hopefully the team on screen and kind of the discussion we had helped answer your question there. But if I was to rank 1 week punts on the screen right now, I'd have Darwin Núñez as number 1, absolutely. I'm going to kind of move Foden to the side, but I do think if we get confirmation that he's available, he's a fantastic move, one of the best. I would go Darwin Núñez number 1, Rashford number 2, and then I probably would throw Martial as number 3, but again, big risk about the minutes for Anthony Martial, whether his body can hold up for 90 minutes. Bo was saying, sell Foden for Rashford or Zaha. My answer is going to be if you can wait until the potential Man City team leaks, I think that's the route to go for because you would kick yourself if Foden was to start and you see him feature in that home game where they are averaging 4 goals a game. I think there is big returns for Phil Foden. If you don't want to wait for the team leaks and you are worried about the Man City game time for Foden, I probably would go to Rashford just based on his underlying stats the last few weeks. John, would you take a -4, Foden and Wilson to Almiron and Darwin? John, I hope that answered your question in regards to the Man City team leaks. I don't think I could sell Foden for a -4. I think there's going to be a haul there if he does get game time. And Madfoot saying, rate my team. Alisson, Gabriel, Trent, Maddison, Zaha, Martinelli, Rashford. Yeah, I think that's a brilliant team. Obviously, I don't know who your other defender is because you've named 2 and you've obviously named 4 midfielders. But I think that's a fantastic team, yes. And I would put the captaincy on Haaland, I would confirm. Mitchell to Darwin, Jay, if you can get that, absolutely with one free transfer, that would be the move to make. Yacino saying, Mitrovic to Solanke or Martial, I have no United or Bournemouth players. Look, this is going to be about your risk appetite, Yacino. I think if you are in a position where you're happy to go for a high-risk, high-reward player, Martial's the answer there. If you want to go for a player that is going to get guaranteed game time with a good fixture, then the answer is going to be Solanke. Got Mitrovic in my team, Raya and Kepa as my goalkeepers. They're only one free transfer. Should I take a -4 or just play Raya? Very, very difficult one because I don't foresee many players in the goalkeeper department that are going to keep clean sheets this week. So I don't like a -4 for a goalkeeper. I would just play Raya, take your medicine and hope he racks up monster saves, maybe even a penalty save, for example. So I would just prioritise selling Mitrovic and start Raya and just accept what would be. Jude said about Mitoma, I've covered that one off, so hopefully that helped. And Sir Moonman saying, went for Martial as well myself. Yeah, hopefully that does pay off for you there. Yacino saying, if Alvarez starts, is he the best Mitrovic replacement? If you're happy to wait that late till the deadline, then yes, I think Alvarez is a brilliant option, but I will not be bringing him in unless you are happy to wait for the potential Man City team leaks. There's too much risk about it. And John saying, would you take a -4 for... Oh, I've covered that one off, John, so hopefully that one did help. And he's saying, where can you get reliable early team news on Man City? So my biggest advice is going to be just get yourself active on Twitter 20 minutes before the deadline. Team News and Ticks has been the account that has been releasing it over on Instagram the last few game weeks. But I can guarantee you that some of the big fantasy football accounts will just tell you what he said on Twitter. So just get yourself active on Twitter 20 minutes before the deadline. I can guarantee you there will be all of the accounts, the big accounts, discussing it before the deadline. So that is the place to be. So, guys, take a mental note of the team here or take a screenshot. These are my top 1 week replacement differentials for game week 16. Next up, I'm going to show you the predicted points for players in game week 16 based on the Fantasy Football Fix algorithm. I'll get that on screen so you guys can check it out. This would probably help more for captaincy. I'm just going to leave this on screen for you guys because I see we have more questions in the chat and I want to make sure I do get through them because it is the last live stream before the World Cup, guys. So we need to make sure we are providing as much value as possible in the stream. So let's get to the predicted points screen now. Okay, guys, so as I mentioned, I'm going to leave this on screen for you guys to check out, but mainly goalkeepers, as I said, it's very rare that we make a goalkeeper transfer as a 1 week punt. I just don't see the upside there. And again, defenders, if you can get a Liverpool defender, I think that is the optimal move. But again, do we go for the Liverpool duo in Trent or Robertson? I do think there is a lot of question marks about whether they offer the value or not. Midfielders, Salah predicted to score 7.6 points and Kevin De Bruyne 6.9. So if you are looking for the best, I think Salah just tips Kevin De Bruyne. But of course, if you don't have Haaland in your team, my advice would be this. If you're confident that Salah is going to outscore Kevin De Bruyne, obviously go for Mo Salah. But if we do get one of those freak games where Man City win 5, 6, 7-0, and you don't captain Kevin De Bruyne and you don't own Haaland, then of course you are exposing yourself a little bit. So my thing would be, if you have a real gut feeling that Man City is just going to destroy Brentford, it might be worth just putting that captaincy on Kevin De Bruyne, because if Haaland's going to score 3, hopefully we can get 3 assists from Kevin De Bruyne to cover off him a little bit there. But of course, those are in those freak games. And Haaland predicted to score 8.6 points. This is of course with him being available and his minutes being guaranteed. Those obviously would decrease if we were to get a situation where he wasn't available. Kane still looking like a fantastic move. And if you have that triple premium of Salah, Haaland and Kane, I think you're going to be the real winners this game week. I think Kane will fly under the radar. Naturally, he won't be a priority move for a lot of managers. And I think he could rack up a monster haul as well against Leeds. It is worth noting. So let me leave that on screen for you guys here. I'm going to come back to the chat and answer any more questions that we have. And obviously, if you have anything relevant to ask about the predicted points or the differential team, let me know and we can touch on that during the last 15 minutes of the stream. So, Lewis is saying, worth a -4 to remove Mitrovic and Wilson for Solanke/Martial and Darwin. I've already got Rashford, so I'm not sure whether to double up on the United attack. Yeah, so I like Solanke if you already have Rashford, and love Darwin as a punt. Obviously, Callum Wilson is a bit of a risk right now going into this week due to illness, and we know Mitrovic is unavailable. So if you're in a position right now where your bench is really weak, then I like the -4 because you are bringing in 2 players that are going to get guaranteed game time. In particular, someone like Darwin Núñez, who I think has the potential for a monster haul. So yes, I do like the -4. Again, it's all about your risk appetite, as I've told a lot of people here. If you really want to go all in on that Man United attack, I love the Martial punt, but I understand you have Rashford already, so you're kind of covering that off. Therefore, I think Solanke is a smarter FPL move. The Maverick move, of course, is going to be Martial, but I don't want to sit here and tell you, go for Martial, be crazy, be risky, because sometimes managers don't want to go for the real differential picks, which are below 5% ownership and also a risk of starting. That becomes a little bit too risky for people. Jonathan Duffy saying, DCL Mitrovic out for Darwin and Solanke for a -4. Yes, I do like that move because we know that both of those aren't going to be playing this week. But again, I ask you, have you got a bench that can come in to help you out? Otherwise, I think the -4 is worth noting. It's worth doing. Josh saying, thanks. I was leaning to Darwin and used my free transfer on him. Just also worried about the cursor transferring the most talked up player by everyone. Yeah. So naturally, that is always the thing. You always feel like the player is going to be cursed. But my counter argument is this. There's a reason why the player is talked about so much. And that is because he's one of the best options this game week. And as I said, this is a perfect example of why people need to disassociate themselves from the outcome. This has always been my biggest advice and why I've always enjoyed fantasy football, because it's very, very difficult to teach people. And of course, it is a mindset that some people want to have, some people don't want to have. But for me, when I make transfers, I think to myself, is it the best transfer and is it based on stats? If the answer is yes, then whatever will be with the outcome, because I can't control that. What I can control is the moves that I make. With Darwin, the numbers are unbelievable. And there is no reason to suggest that he's a bad move. So when the outcome happens, and if he gets a 2-pointer, I think you just have to laugh at it because you know you made the right move based on underlying stats, based on fixture, and based on budget. And if the outcome doesn't work, then the outcome doesn't work. I don't think you've made a poor move there, Josh. Cobb saying, hit the like, people. Yes, please, guys. If you can, drop a like and get us to 50 likes before the end of this stream, that'd be massively appreciated. I can see about 60 of us in here already, so that'd be awesome if you can do that if you haven't already. Rare to Gaita or Bowen to Kulusevski. I don't like goalkeeper transfers just because I don't see the upside in doing them. So I think Bowen to Kulusevski would be my move. But again, Bowen has been incredibly disappointing. West Ham haven't been all inspiring, but I wouldn't put it past Bowen getting a result at home. It is worth noting. Lee, do you know when unlimited transfers opens? Yes, so once the Game Week 16 deadline is passed, unlimited transfers are available to us. But honestly, guys, I would take a few weeks off FPL. The prices are going to be frozen over the World Cup, so nothing can happen. They're going to be completely frozen. So whatever you do a week or 3 weeks later doesn't matter. You're not going to lose any team value. So there's no point playing around with your team, because you could play around with your team, think, oh, this is the optimal team for Game Week 17. Match day 1, injury. Match day 2, injury. Match day 3, injury. And before you know it, you're creating a completely different draft. So my advice would be this. Although, obviously, everybody wants to play FPL, enjoy the downtime, as nothing really is going to happen with the prices over that period. Yacino saying, just a tip for people waiting team leaks. To make your transfer, open your FPL app and let it open 1 hour before. Okay, yeah, so some decent stuff there. In regards to the team leaks. If we get a team leak about Man City, anticipate the site to crash. Have both the app and the website available for you to do your transfers. Have your transfers in place that you know whatever situation happens with the team leak, you know what you're going to do with your team. So if Foden's bench, you know what you're going to do. If Alvarez starts, you know what you're going to do. Just means that you don't have to dilly-dally on the app. You can go straight in, get your transfers done, and straight back out before the servers crash. Would you consider Barnes and Mitrovic to Mitoma and Darwin for -4? Not big on it because I think Leicester and Barnes have been very good over the last few weeks, and I think Barnes could easily pick up a decent return this game week. We need to remember there's no World Cup for him this season. Mitoma, I don't feel like is an improvement for Barnes, but naturally Darwin Núñez is. Is he a -4 improvement on Barnes and Mitrovic? I would put a question mark on that one there. I think it's all about the upside that you want to chase, JL. I just think Barnes is an okay pick this week. Nacho, as an English citizen, do you think TA or Trippier starts the World Cup? I think Trippier starts the World Cup, absolutely. And I would start him personally if I was the manager. Hashim saying Gaia or Andreas. Gaia or Andreas? Against a Nottingham Forest team who look good against Spurs, it is worth noting. But Andreas, without Mitrovic, is basically relying on what I would argue set pieces. Probably Guy. It's worth noting what I will do, obviously, is use a fancy football fix predicted points because we need to use that to our disposal while we have it, guys. So, looking at the two players for game week 16 in isolation, Andreas Pereira is projected to score 3.1 points, and Guy is predicted to score 4. So, based on that, Guy would be the answer. Perisic projected points. Yes, that's a really good point because he actually hasn't come up on the top for defenders, but he's projected to score 3.4 points. Is there risk about his minutes? Maybe that's hindered the algorithm. I do think it is worth noting that the algorithm understands that Leeds offensively are good this season. Therefore, negates the kind of clean sheet potential, which obviously is going to decrease his returns. However, if we get him on all set pieces, which I do think will happen, we get that clean sheet, that rare clean sheet for Spurs, then we are in the big double-digit haul territory. But we know the risk that is going to be happening. Benny Blanco saying, Mitro out for Martial or Scamacca. I'm not big on Scamacca personally, so I probably would go for the punt on Martial. But again, understand that there is risk with Martial in this game time. Talk about risk. I tell you, I got Greenwood for Haaland last week. That is a risk, but Greenwood delivered. Unbelievable. Jonathan, cheers for the feedback. I think I'm going to bring in just Darwin and rely on the bench and save the hit. Yeah, I think that's some wise move, Jonathan. Marco, I'm so conflicted on whether or not to wait for Man City information because I do want Darwin as he is predicted to rise in price. So I think, Marco, I think the big thing here is there team news that could happen that will affect your team? Some people out there are selling Mitrovic for Darwin Núñez, and the Man City news doesn't change anything regarding it. So, look, I think realistically, Haaland was on the bench for the last 2 games. I think if he doesn't start, he gets game time off the bench. So I don't think you're going to sell Haaland. So I think if you don't want to worry about the Man City team leaks, just treat this as a game week where, as if we weren't going to get Man City news, and just get the transfers done and enjoy your Saturday morning, I think. Why don't I talk about Ben Rama? I'm not too bullish on him, but I think he's an okay transfer. I just think there's better one-week hits out there than Ben Rama. It's worth noting Ben Rama is predicted to score 2.7 points, so not looking like the best move, but again, he scored that worldie in game week 15. It is worth noting. John WT2 saying, I have 1 free transfer left and no spare cash. Is it worth doing Dunk to White? I wouldn't personally. Yeah, it's okay, and you have 1 free transfer left, but it doesn't excite me. And I think Dunk has the potential to keep a clean sheet against Aston Villa. It is worth noting. I would argue, is there a more exciting transfer that you could do potentially? Jay, I have 1 free transfer, Mitro to Alvarez to Darwin Núñez. Absolutely. He'll get way more minutes than Alvarez. John, apparently prices can change up to midnight Saturday, so post-deadline prices could change. Okay, John, good advice there. I think what we will do is we'll get a post out on social media just to kind of clarify you guys, because the Fantasy Football official site probably had the information. Unfortunately, me sitting here right now, I haven't done my research diligently, so I do apologise, but I'm almost certain that Fantasy Football Fix HQ will know the answers to that, so I'm sure they will be putting a social media post. So make sure you are following on Twitter and Instagram on all the good stuff, as I'm almost certain they will update you guys exactly what the rule is, but I don't want to sit here and pretend I know exactly what it is. I probably should have got a bit of information there before I jumped on this stream. I do apologise. Hashim saying, Wilson out for Jesus or bring Salah for a -4 instead of Foden. I prefer the Wilson to Jesus move if you are going to do that move. Instead of Foden, if Foden starts, then we have got some big returns in store, I think. Hashim saying, great live stream. Thanks a lot, FPL Nacho. Really appreciate you tuning in, buddy. Jay, thanks, mate. Thank you, buddy, for tuning into the live stream. Betty Blanco, what is Martial's predicted points for game week 16? So, look, I can guarantee you Martial's predicted points are going to be really, really limited. We currently have it at 1.4 projected points, but we need to remember that the Fantasy Football Fix algorithm points take into account expected minutes, and I think it is worth noting that the expected minutes for Martial are really up in the air. We don't know how his body reacted to that Carabao Cup game. He could have played 60 minutes. He obviously did score, but we have no underlying stats to kind of predict his points. 1.4 predicted points is obviously such a conservative points kind of like prediction. If we were to bump up the expected points, expected minutes, then obviously we're going to see an increase in the projected points. So what I'm saying is, realistically for Martial, the stats are amazing, but they're only 129 minutes worth. So we can't come to any conclusions. The minutes are not there for us to make any sort of conclusions. So Martial is a perfect example of just a complete punt. You need to understand that if you go for Martial, you take the risk of the minutes, you take the risk of another injury, him getting, and you just understand all those things. And then if you go for it, you just are fully aware of the risk that comes with that pick. Hesham saying, I have Bruno Fernandes. Should I sell him or is he a good differential? I think he's a brilliant differential. Do I think Salah and KDB are better options than him? Absolutely, I do. But looking at the Fulham home, let me try and word this better. Looking at the underlying stats defensively for Fulham, I think there's going to be so many chances of Man United in this game. Fernandes hasn't necessarily been delivering massively from a points perspective, but I think he is operating well in this Man United team, so I would not be looking to sell him. Realistically, if you sell him, I only would be selling him to either Kevin De Bruyne or to Salah. That's the only route I would plan on selling him. Otherwise, I think he's a great differential. Steve is saying, lots of great info. Thanks for the stream. Good luck, everyone. I look forward to continuing my slide from the top 1K to the depths of obscurity. Steve, I really hope you do get a green arrow this week. First and foremost, being in the top 100 at some point is a great feat. Hopefully, it is a strong game week for you. We need to remember that we're not even halfway through the season. So there's a lot of people out there panicking about their ranks. There is still so much to happen this season. Unlimited transfers as well. It's going to be a great opportunity. So all the best, Steve. And Colin saying, my 2 free transfers are Firmino and Pope. I have Ramsdale out for Darwin and Ward. Firmino plays too far back for me. We'll worry about Foden tomorrow. Okay, yeah, I think that's fair. Obviously, the situation, if you want to wait for the situation with Foden, you hold off the transfers until the potential team leak. But again, if you're worried about the site crashing, then I understand the risk there. In regards to the goalkeeper transfer, I understand why you're doing it because it's a cash cow that you're selling to free up the funds to do Firmino and Darwin. We know with Firmino that any place, anytime, he could pop up with those hat tricks that he does. But I agree, if I had a straight shootout between Darwin Núñez and Firmino, obviously my pick would be going to Darwin Núñez. Just be cautious that there are them games where Firmino can just really deliver, but I understand the logic behind your thought there. Marco saying, the reason why I'm worried is because I do need to transfer out Foden to Trossard to get Darwin, but it does make sense to not worry and just go for it. Marco, your question previously was, yeah, so basically you're really desperate to get Darwin in, but in order to bring in Darwin, you have to transfer out Foden and Trossard. So I like it for like 2 free transfers. If it's a points hit, then we are really starting to question whether it is worthwhile because, as I said, if you do take a points hit and you don't want to wait to the Man City team league, which I absolutely understand, selling Foden for a points hit when he potentially may start just doesn't sit right with me personally when we know we could just get that information 20 minutes before the deadline and take that risk. So it's all about kind of whether you want to have a stressful Saturday morning. If you don't, get cracking with the moves, and then just enjoy your Saturday and accept what will be will be. Treat it as if we're not going to get a team leak, which usually we don't, and we're just playing pep roulette as usual. Raya, Saliba, Trippier, Virgil, KDB, Trossard, Almiron, Martinelli, Bowen, Haaland, Nunes, Mitro, and Dyer on the bench. 1 free transfer. So you've got a formation there of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2 up top in Haaland and Nunes, Mitro and Dyer on the bench. So the midfield I really like. KDB, Trossard, Almiron, Martinelli, Bowen. I can't sit here and tell you to really sell any of those players, to be honest with you. They're all fantastic. Even Bowen, who's really not been delivering recently, I think at home is still a good opportunity for him. And I can't really sit here and tell you to sell any of those defenders either. I think the Arsenal defensive coverage is a really solid move. I think the big toss-up here is going to be how much money do you have in the bank and whether you want to get yourself some Man United coverage. If you do, maybe doing Bowen down to Rashford is an optimal move. Otherwise, your team looks great. I know with the free transfer, you want to use it. If you are in a position where you want to use that free transfer and you're happy with your outfield players, then I think the move to make, and it doesn't feel right, would be selling Raya. And right now, based on our predicted points, if you were to do a goalkeeper transfer, and it's worth noting, I hate goalkeeper transfers, but if you're in a position where your starting 11 is fantastic and you don't want to improve any of them, then looking at our goalkeepers, Raya is currently priced at 4.6 million. So if you have 4.6 million available to you, looking at the projected points, Sanchez is probably the best route for you to go to. Otherwise, Gaeta of Crystal Palace. And you have 0.2, yeah. So you don't really have much to play with your team. I think you do one of two things. You either go for a crazy upside move of doing Mitrovic to Martial, and you go crazy and you just accept that. You go for that route. You're talking about doing Bowen to Kulusevski. I don't mind the move. I think that's a decent move. So Bowen out is probably the move that I would consider. Please understand that at home, 82% of Bowen's returns have been at home. So I would not be surprised if Bowen does deliver in this home game. But if you kind of want to go for a bit more of a crazier punt, then I think Bowen out. Kulusevski, I understand, is a great move. I really like Martial as well. Rashford. Even though he is going to be slightly cheaper, it might not feel right. I do think he is a brilliant move as well. Would you keep Eduardo or move him to Solanke? If I had the money, if I had a free transfer, I would move him to Solanke, yes. Who am I going to captain? I would rank the captains like this. Haaland number 1, Salah number 2 / KDB, depending if you have any Haaland coverage. Harry Kane number 3. And you can see that based on our predicted points on the screen. Marco, thanks man. Like the advice so far. Appreciate it, buddy. Thanks for tuning in. Yacine, will you cover World Cup Fantasy? No, we will not be covering it on this channel here. I don't believe. If we do, we'll put a post up. But I do think that we are going to take a slight break and get the FPL content ramped back up later on in the month. So I really hope you guys do stick around for that because we've got some fantastic content coming up for the rest of the season. So guys, we're going to wrap up the stream there. Thank you so much for tuning in. We've just been going for over an hour. So if you are just jumping in and you want to watch it back, I've revealed my team plans going into game week 16. I've covered off a differential 11 of 1 week punts who I think are the best ones to own. And of course, you can see on screen there the projected points for game week 16. So hopefully those help with your captaincy choices and potential transfers. So guys, that all that leaves me to say is thank you so much for tuning in, not only into this live stream, but the last 15/16 live streams that we have done so far this season. The only reason I'm saying that is because, of course, we have the World Cup coming up. So this is the last live stream before the World Cup break. We are obviously going to be back over the Christmas period. So if you haven't already, make sure you do hit that subscribe button so you are tuning into the Fantasy Football Fix content. And if you do enjoy the stream, make sure you do drop a like on your way out just to show that it has been valuable to you guys. Look, we're not going anywhere, but as I said, we'll be taking a slight break and coming back with FPL content when it is relevant. Hope you guys have a fantastic game week. Remember, there will be potentially some Man City team leaks. So if you want to wait that late, wait around for 20 minutes for the deadline, but you will be taking a risk on the fantasy football site crashing. obviously you judge whether you want to take that risk or not. Have a great game week, guys. Have a great weekend, and I will talk to you guys very, very